It's very educational and a lot of information goes out there. So to introduce myself, my name is Prashanti Reddy. I'm an immigration attorney. I'm based out of New York. I've been practicing since 1997, so it's been a while. I mostly do business immigration, so I also do some family, but it's, 80% of it is business immigration. So pretty much, filing H's, green cards, I-140s, labors, perms, O's, E's, L's. This is what I do. And we're all excited after much drama. Today itself, I was telling Jyotsna there was so much drama about, for those of you who have been following the website, they have changed it a bunch of times and, turned around 360 degrees. So, but we can talk about that further. But just happy that right now, the filing dates have been reopened for maybe thousands of people. And let's hope that they are, the attorneys are organized enough and you guys are organized enough to get your documents together, and so that we'll, be able to file in a timely manner.
Thank you so much. And Prashanti, today, first and foremost, it's very strange to see that the date of filing, if we speak about, for EB3, it has gone to 2015. Whereas for EB2, it still restricts itself to May 2011. Now, in this situation where a lot of people, of course, were expecting, EB2 will also move, your insights on this, and of course, we'll go step by step. First, explore date of final action. We'll go from that step first so that we clear it. And then we will go about date of filing. And of course, how we can downgrade from EB2 to EB3, considering the whole scenario, what is happening, and of course the dates have moved there. So there are a lot of questions. My group members are also posting a lot of comments there on Facebook, so I'll read them for you as well. So let's gain the whole insight from you about this visa bulletin. Specifically, cover all. I mean, I know that EB1 has become current, so we are more concerned about EB2, EB3. That's the humongous backlog, that we are in actually, this category.
So yes, the news of the day, of the hour, of the year, of the century, at least of the last 10 years, is that...
No, I'll say yes, absolutely 10 years. What? No, yeah. 2007, so it's 13 years.
Since 2007.
13 years, yes. 13 years.
Is that we had hoped it will become current for everyone, but that was maybe too optimistic to hope that. But still, it went forward until 2015 for EB3. That's a huge leap, right, of priority date. So that's thousands of people being covered under this visa bulletin. And also, if you've noticed in the visa bulletin, it talks about rapid forward movement. Usually that language isn't there. I've never seen that language in a visa bulletin before. But at the end of the visa bulletin, it talks about rapid forward movement for India, EB2 and EB3. So I don't know why they put that language in there specifically this time, but it's there and it's in bold and underlined. So
rapid movement, and they quoted it specifically for India?
Yes, rapid forward movement for EB2, EB3 in India. What to expect? So they have a heading. It says what to expect. And then it says rapid forward movement for EB2, EB3 India to be expected in the future. So that gives me some sign of hope that in addition to October, we might see movement in the following months as well. But as of now, we only can talk about information that we have now. This minute even, because every minute they keep changing it. And I wanted to tell you what happened today. Okay. There was a huge drama.
Climax.
So on the website, on the USCIS website, where they actually, so just to backtrack, when you get the visa bulletin, they usually, for people who know it and who have been following it, and most of the people that we're talking to now know more than me maybe about the visa bulletin because they follow it so anxiously every month. If you look at the visa bulletin, there will be two tables. So one is the filing date and one is the final action date. So right. Usually it's always only the final action date that they look at, and they don't look at date of filing. So, but traditionally every year come October, they switch it and they look at, usually they look at dates for filing. And that is what has happened. But in the morning we had a link sent to us several people got this link and it was forwarded. And it
Mhm.
said that, oh, October 2020, that USCIS website where it has the table as to what to look at, which is usually a link that you go through from the visa bulletin. So
Mhm.
that there was a post or a link that was, being circulated, which said that the final dates are going to be looked at and not dates for filing.
Right.
And we were like heartbroken. We were like, what the hell? What does this mean? What is the purpose of having visa numbers available and not being able to file? But then when we went back and looked at the website, it was not there anywhere on the website. So it looks like someone posted it and then removed it.
Wow.
So it was not there anyway. I tried to look at the, navigate it and
Uh-huh.
see, follow the URL, but it was not there anyway. So we were confused for quite some time. And then when I was on a conference call today, there were 500 people on the call,
Mhm.
and message came in that, oh, they've changed it. It's available now, and it's available now where it's supposed to be, and go look at it. And we went and looked at it, and it said that only final action dates will be considered, which means that it hasn't moved at all.
Right.
And then while we were halfway through the conference call, not even halfway, maybe 10, 15 minutes later, they said, oh, it's changed again. And then we went back again and looked at it, and this time it said, they changed the table to dates for filing. And that's a significant difference between the two,
Absolutely.
because there's tremendous forward movement if you look at this table, dates for
Right.
filing table.
Right. Right.
And so now, as of now, that's why I'm saying as of this minute, it's still dates for filing. It's not, I mean, again, you can look at it again just to make sure. But we're hoping it'll stick to that, and it continues to be dates for filing. And so there's been a tremendous forward movement. And so all of us have to get ready with, mainly your medicals, your birth certificates,
Mhm.
because these are the things that you usually don't have.
What are the
Medicals you will
basic
not
things
have.
required in the process?
So the basic things required to file a 485 is, of course, proof of your status. That is very basic, which is your H-1B approvals, all your approvals that you have so far, your latest I-94, whether that is via the port of entry, then you have to download it from the website. Or if it's attached to your I-94 H-1 approval, if you have not traveled, then it will be attached to the
Mhm.
H1. So that's your status. Then your pay stubs to show that you're currently in status. And then you will have to also submit your proof of identity. So your birth certificate and
Mhm.
nationality. So your passport, your birth certificate. So the birth certificate can be tricky because if you don't have a birth certificate, then you have to obtain something called non-availability certificate. And in addition to that non-availability certificate, you have to then submit secondary evidence. And the secondary evidence can be in the form of affidavits, at least 2 affidavits from your family members who were present at the time of your birth. So it has
There
to be
could be
someone older
parents
than
as
you.
well.
Yeah, it could be parents, but it's always better if it's uncles or aunts rather than being immediate family members,
Mhm.
but whatever is available for you. So obviously they have to be older than you because they have to be present at the time of your birth. The affidavit should say who they are, how they're related to you, what your date of birth is, and how they came to know, how they got the knowledge that this is your date of birth. So usually it's I was present at the time of their birth, so I know that they were born on so and so date, so and so, so and so date. So that's what an affidavit looks like. So that's a birth affidavit.
Okay.
Um, if you and also if you have a late registered, say you have a birth certificate but it was not registered around the time of your birth, but it
Okay.
was registered many years later, or maybe it was registered now,
Mm.
even then you'll have to produce secondary evidence. You'll have to produce again the birth affidavit. Another piece of secondary evidence that you can produce is the school leaving certificate, or we call it the transfer certificate in India. Most people get this at the end of their 10th grade. So that's also something that is acceptable secondary evidence as per USCIS for Indian nationals.
Mhm.
So in addition to that, you also have to produce family relationship documents. So if you're filing for your dependents, if you're filing for your children, you need to submit their birth certificates. You're filing for your spouse, you need to submit your marriage certificate. So these are documents that you may not readily have, and you might have to get from abroad. So it's very important to do this first. The rest of the documents I think you will have. There is of course, a questionnaire that has to be filled out if you're going to an attorney. So what I'm saying is start the process as soon as you possibly can.
Right.
Don't
Regarding the
delay.
birth certificate, Prashanti, thank you for those inputs. One basic question. Basically, people get the affidavit made, sometimes the affidavit has been made some years back and the person is deceased now who was there signing the affidavit. Does it still hold good?
Yes, as long as it's an affidavit, and if it was given at like 10 years ago or something and the person is no longer there, you can
Right.
submit it. And if there is a question about it,
Right.
then you can always submit a new one
Okay, sure.
at the time of
I
the
mean,
interview.
birth certificate would essentially not hold the process. I mean, we can supplement.
Yes, you have to submit something. If you don't submit anything, then that's not a good way of filing. You don't want to file a
Definitely.
skeleton petition. And
Now,
even though in the past, they have said that 485 can be returned if basic documents are not submitted. They said it can be returned. So now they have taken back that. They have not implemented that as yet. They have taken it back. But still,
right.
you want to submit at least the basic documents. When you're
Basic
filing your
means, see, the
485.
date of birth proof is anyways there with all the documents that we have, the
Right.
passport and everything, we came here
No,
legally.
the passport they will not accept as.
No, the school leaving certificate, the school
Yes,
certificates have
secondary
valid proof
documents,
there.
non-availability, I would submit. Of course, if you cannot, and if you do not have it, I would not file. I would still file it with whatever you have.
With the
But
school
it's
leaving
prudent
certificates and all the records, right?
It's prudent to file it with a non-availability certificate.
Understood. And the
In addition to
affidavits?
secondary evidence, if you don't have a birth certificate.
Okay.
In addition to that, if you have to remember the 944 form, which is a new requirement as of February 2020, which is the public charge form. So you have to show that you will not be a public charge, that you are self-sufficient. It's called a self-sufficiency form. And that you will not, they want to make sure that you will not use, the healthcare system, or, you will not use the welfare system in the United States once you become a green card holder. So in order to prove this, you will have to submit your health insurance documents, your bank statements, tax returns, if you're not working right now, then your eligibility to work, or your workable status, meaning, what kind of degree do you have? So your degree certificates to show that you can actually get a job.
Basically for the primary, we are speaking about the primary applicant on whose basis the I-140 EAD is grounded. I mean, it's not about the H4s, or the dependents.
No,
we're talking about person who's not working, or whatever the situation is, how he's able to generate money and all.
Right. Even if he's presently not working, if he's laid off for some reason temporarily, then you could still file, but you have to show that you have potential to work.
All right.
That your potential to work is there, and you will not in the future be a public charge.
Sure.
So those are the basic documents that are required, I think, to file a 485. Perfect. The form itself is many pages long.
So the form is filled by the employer, or the
attorney fills it, or the employer really has not much to do in this process, except for filling out the 485J. This is again a new requirement. In the past, there would be an employment letter required from the employer showing that the job is still available. The permanent job offer is still available. But instead of having the employment letter, now they have a 485J. They have a separate form that has to be signed by the employer. But otherwise, the rest of it is basically
so there are many tricky questions I'll relate to that, when people have left job and data become current and all. We'll come back to that. We'll go in series one by one. So first is getting the form signed. Okay, the employer signs the form J.
Right.
That's the form J they sign, basically, right? As you said.
Correct. Yeah.
And the documentation is done by the legal department of the related company where the person is an employee. And of course, the fees filing.
Actually, no, the beneficiary can find their own employee. It has no longer anything to do with the employer. The only part that is filled out by the employer is that J form, which is a very short form, 2 or 3 columns.
Okay, let's expand it right now then. Let's speak about it like this. Now, the person X is working at company A, but he used to work for company B earlier, through which his date has become current. I mean, he filed I-140 there. The A company has not filed it right now, the current company now, but previous company had filed, approved I-140, was lying, and of course he moved on to another company. So how does he take the benefit of this approved I-140 which is lying there with the old company?
So he has to go back to the old company and ask them if they're willing to, if they still have a job offer a permanent job offer open for them. He doesn't have to presently work at that company. It's not a H1 situation. This is a green card situation, which is a future job offer where the employer is promising to give that person a job after they get a green card. So as long as that job offer is still open and they sign that 485J, the rest of it is all, 485 is traditionally beneficiary kind of application. So really the employer really has not much to do with it other than filing that employment letter or filing that J form. So the beneficiary can use
But what if
whichever
the
attorney they
previous
want.
employer says, sorry, I am not filling in anything for you?
Yeah, then it's a problem because there has to be a job offer, right? To have a green card, there has to be a job offer. So if they're not willing to, there is obviously benefit for them to file it, to fill out that, because it's just a signature required at this point. It's not onerous for the company to do it, and the beneficiary has to obviously benefit the company in some way. They have to say that, once they get the EAD, they will join them for a certain period of time.
Right.
Because they have to, until they get, once you file the 485 for 6 months, they have to be with that job offer has to be open.
Right.
And it's prudent that they join that employer once the EAD gets approved. So there is some benefit for the employer here as well to sign that 485J. And also, even if you're currently working for the employer, a lot of employers think that, oh, we'd rather they stay on a H1 than, they get their 485 and then leave us.
Right.
Actually, it's prudent. It makes more sense for them to be on a 485 and you hire them on a 485 on a EAD rather than hiring them on a H1, because the H1 rules are changing. And once you cannot go over that, you cannot go over that 50 mark. If you're more than 50 employees,
absolutely right.
You have to file, $4,000 is the filing fee. Anytime you have to, even for extensions now, they're changing it, by the way.
Right. They're increasing the fees from October 2nd. I believe this 485 filing will have an increased fees now.
Yeah, by $1,000. That's a different story. Yes.
$1,000 per head?
Wow. Yes. Yeah. Okay. But that's a different story. But I'm talking about the employers right now. And I'm saying that it's beneficial for the employers as well, whoever is listening, if you're an employer, to file their 485 as soon as possible and to get them on an EAD because of the 50-50 rules for the H1. Because otherwise you'll be paying much more money to file their amendments and extensions. And you can no longer, you can grow faster this way if you have people on EAD rather than on H1.
That's true. So Prashanti, series of questions here. I'll take one-on-one. Of course, the numbers, first come, first serve kind of thing. A lot of people are commenting here. We are live on Facebook right now. And of course, I'm recording this session as well for, I'll upload it on the YouTube later on so that people can be well aware of what has happened in this conversation if there is a limitation of Facebook groups. To everyone, why I'm asking basic questions first is, of course, that is a question. And we will take one more thing. In fact, while before we go to these one-on-one questions is, now the situation is EB3 is 2015 and EB2 is still at May 2011, right? In this situation, if a person is working in a company, current company, who filed for his I-140, basically through whom they're getting it current now, right? Or say the perm was filed, or whatever you say is like how it has happened, that they get their current date, prior date is basically the perm and the I-140 approved, right? Person has not changed company. Can that person downgrade from EB2 to EB3 to avail the benefit of this date now? Same company.
Yes, so that's again a question, very, very important question, the most asked question today for me. I've answered this question several times already today. But yes, it's very important because a lot of folks are in EB2. We tend to file a lot more EB2s than EB3s, and that's why there's less demand for EB3s, and that's why that the numbers have moved.
Right.
So all those people who have filed in EB2 because they were qualified to file in EB2 may want to now downgrade to EB3. So what they need to do right now is file an I-140 amended petition, downgrading it from EB2 to EB3, and concurrently file the 485. So together, you're filing the I-140 and amendment, and you're filing the 485.
But does it make their, sorry to interrupt, attaching the question right now, does it make their EB2 void, EB2 I-140 void?
Right. So once you file an amendment, so you have to file, I just want to finish this train of thought.
Okay.
Once you file the concurrent I-140 and 485, this is the only way to do it, because as of now, the information that we have it's good for October. But in November, we don't know how the dates will retrogress or what will happen or how much time we have. So you don't have time to actually file an I-140 amendment and then wait for it to get approved and then file a 485. So very important that I want to stress that you have to file it concurrently. And to add to that, there is no I-140 premium processing for downgrading of EB3. Is there any disadvantage in doing downgrading EB3 and filing EB3, I-140 and 485? There is no disadvantage. And coming to your question, the reason there is no disadvantage in doing this is because you still get to keep your EB2, I-140, it's still there. It's not become invalidated.
Oh, it does not become void. That was my question.
No, it doesn't become void just because you file another I-140.
Okay.
You simply have two I-140s now.
All right.
One EB2 and one EB3.
Perfect.
And you can choose which one to use. And even if you file your 485, right? You're filing say you downgrade it to EB3, you file the amended petition along with the 485.
Right.
It's in, you're in.
All right.
But sometime in the future, 6 months later, EB2 becomes current.
Right.
Then you can interfile your existing I-140 and say that you want to replace the EB3 I-140 with the EB2 I-140 and possibly get your green card immediately. So you're not losing anything at all for all of those who are on
awesome.
EB2.
So here's the situation.
The only scary part is then it's going to become unavailable because every EB2 will then do the downgrade, which they should, because they're allowing you to do it.
They are going to do it.
Yeah, so you
and
should.
And then they will be stuck in this.
Then there'll be an EB3. There'll be definitely be an EB3 demand, and it will go back. But again,
yes.
As I said, you still have the ability to
come back to EB2 then.
Yes, so
that's the major question, basically.
I think you should keep both. And even if the numbers you're not able to file in October, or for some magic reason the website changes again,
right?
You should still downgrade to EB3 and just file an I-140 amendment, and then keep both your I-140s and then choose which one to use.
So even if the I-140 amendment, we did and we used that category of EB3, say supposedly, and later on EB2 gets current, we can still go back.
Correct.
And claim it.
Yes.
Because it becomes very tricky for people who are in 2010, 11, this is the dates.
Now, right, because you're very close in EB2 and you're current in EB3. So
right. Now for them, it's a tricky situation. Somebody has date January 2011 or say February 2011 or December 2010. Now they're thinking, should I go to EB3? Because even if the dates are not moving from, the final action dates are only 2009 or something, right? Whereas in this, it is December 2010, right? So they will think, okay, let's go to this category, EB3 category, try availing. Maybe we become current at least here, the final action dates, right? And if it doesn't happen, then we'll go back to EB2.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying. We can do both. So you're not losing anything really, because it's hard to decide, as you said, we don't have a crystal ball.
I mean, it's very hard right now.
We can't see what will happen in November. We don't know what will happen in December. They are talking about forward movement, but we don't know. And this situation is unique, right? They only became available because the family-based visa numbers have not been used this year. There's been a very, very low usage of family-based. So 250,000 visas have been added. And if you see all rest of the world is current, EB1, EB2, EB3, everything is current.
Now they cannot put the country caps even, for the war for which
current.
There has been a fight.
India and China is not current. China is much better off, 2018.
Understood. So this becomes very clear now that porting from EB2 to EB3 can happen, and we can do interchangeability. Again, we can interchange it, the petition, this thing, EB, thing to EB2 again, right? All right. I mean, this is something, this question will be asked 1,000 times just to ascertain and still feel doubtful about it.
Right. So as of now, this is the situation. Again, if regulations will change, something will happen, we don't know. But as of now, yes, this is the situation. Okay, now, and we've been doing this for a while.
Now, there are big corporates, big companies, or say, these MSPs, you know, companies like Cognizant, TCS and all, their immigration department is very tough to handle. I mean, you know, they don't move EB2, EB3 that frequently. How does an employee reach out and say, hey, please kindly downgrade? Will they hear or not? Or they'll just say, oh, keep sitting, we can't help it.
So for big companies, one thing to worry about is the ability to pay, right? So if you're filing hundreds of petitions in 1 month, right? They're going to get I-140 RFEs asking if you have the ability to pay for all these 100 people from the date that you last filed the I-140 to present. So they have to make sure that either the prevailing wage is being paid already via the W-2, or there is an I-140, there is enough net profits in the tax return or net current assets. So one of these things has to happen, and somebody has to look at it and see if it makes sense, because there will be RFEs and asking for all the cases that you filed together, adding every
Downgrading.
case.
No, I'm asking about downgrading. Say they're going mass
So if you
downgrading from
downgrade,
EB2 to EB3.
it's still the same. If you're downgrading also, it's the same because the prevailing wage hasn't changed. Remember, the labor cert is not changing. It's still the same prevailing wage. The wage has not changed. Now the thing is, they're going to ask you for prevailing wage. Say the I-140 was approved in 2015. From 2015 to present, they're going to ask you again to show the ability to pay. This is what you had to do previously.
And that is for the EB3 category.
Any category, any I-140 that you file.
All right.
You have to do that. So when you're amending it, again, you have to do that. It's like filing a new application where the ability to pay is concerned. Because you
so that's a big tricky situation.
Yes.
Now supposedly person has approved everything and they feel that their employer is not going to do it. And they plan
so
to
if you're already approved, if your employer agrees, even if it gets denied, you at least would have tried, right? And this is
no, if the
very
employer
important.
is not agreeing now, because
then there's nothing you can do anyway. The end of conversation.
Can't do anything.
So,
the dates became current, but you can't enjoy them.
Yeah, unless you can convince your employer by, as I was saying previously, showing them that there's more benefit for you to be with them on an EAD than being with them on a H1, and give them some kind of assurance that you will stay with them for a certain period of time, because most often they're concerned that you will leave after 6 months of filing.
Getting it.
But you will anyway leave. Even on a H1 you can leave if you want to, right? Sure. So there's nothing stopping you from filing a transfer. Filing a transfer is very easy. So they shouldn't feel threatened because you can leave either way. But it's beneficial for them if you're on an EAD, because your wages are not so stringent. They can give you any wages they want.
With the H1B reforms coming into picture, that kind of thing, stringency.
And the processing is not that difficult. Every time you change employers or change end clients, they don't have to file an amendment. So, things become easier.
Indeed. You don't have to file LCA as well, Changing clients, you file
things become
LCAs
much easier. Even if they don't have a project for you, they can put you on the bench.
Right, true. So absolutely.
There's a lot more flexibility for an employer if somebody's on an EAD.
Now, okay, this is one set covered now. We're talking about the porting from EB2 to EB3 and EB3 to EB2 again. Interchangeability can be done. That was a major question for all my audience. I believe that gets solved here. Now, another situation. Independent filing of I-485 can only happen if the previous employer gives the J form, right?
Yes.
That is future employment. Okay, I'll hire you when you get your green card. No, what does it mean?
When you get your EAD.
When you get your EAD, okay, I'll hire you. So that's the form, the relationship you have to maintain good with your previous employers. That is a lesson served for everyone. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Now, maintaining H1B. While you have your EAD coming in, I-140 EADs, what is the suggestion on maintaining your H1Bs and H4 visas?
Right. So that's an individual choice. You can, if you want to stay on a H1 and not change the I-9 form, your employer will then not change the I-9 form and will not include the EAD as, your employment document. And only when he does that, your status actually changes to EAD from a H1.
Is there any demerit of changing the status in terms of travel and all, advanced payroll and all those things? Can you explain that thing as well?
Yes, so the advantage of being on
we're all new people there to understand that.
So the advantage of being on a 485 EAD is that you have more flexibility with your job. After 6 months, you can change employment. You can keep changing. Your spouse will have EAD and can start their own business or work wherever they want. There is no constraint at all for them as to where they can work. And you are not bound by the stringent H-1B rules, right? And you are not likely to become out of status. If you're on a H1, at some point, things happen. So the chances of becoming out of status are less. The disadvantages are of moving completely to a 485 and not maintaining your H1 parallelly are that you have to, every time you travel, you have to wait for advance parole. You cannot travel without an advance parole. And sometimes, now if you look at the COVID situation, how long advance paroles are taking a long time. They're taking 6+ months. And they're valid, and you have to file, if they make you file it for every year, they give it to once a year, and they make you file EAD and 765 every year. That is a big hassle, filing this every year. It's not that it'll get rejected, but just the processing time.
Right. So how to parallelly maintain both then?
There might be a situation where your EAD doesn't come on time, then you have to get off the payroll. So that is the disadvantage of being just on a 485 and not.
How do you parallelly maintain both, and how do you take advantage of both? Is a tricky question, and for novices, it's a big question.
Yeah, you can, if you don't move to EAD, which I was saying earlier, if your I-9 reflects that you are still on a H1, and if your I-9 is not updated to show that you're on a EAD, you continue to be on a H1. It's as simple as that. And then you continue to be on H1, you have to maintain your H1. Parallelly, your 485 is running. You're not using your EAD, but you have EAD. So that's what it is. Then you can travel using advance parole. You can travel. You don't need to get a H1 visa. You can travel. This is a tricky thing.
Are saying
only available on a H1B. You can travel on an advance parole, come back into the country, but still continue to be on a H1. Okay. Very important.
So this is very important. Repeat it again, please.
So you can travel on an advance parole, come back into the US, and still continue to maintain your H1B status. Okay. But if you move to an EAD, then you cannot come back to H1 status. You have to leave the country, apply for a visa, come back on a H1 if you need to. So EAD, you cannot come back. But if you travel on advance parole, you can always maintain your H1. So that's the tricky thing here.
To simplify it, I have an EAD now, I-140 EAD, and I also have my H1. When I travel out of the country, I don't need a visa stamping. On advance parole, I can travel and come back. At the same time, my H1B visa keeps me safe in terms of the
well, in case your 485 gets denied for some reason, if you do not have a H1, then you will fall out of status.
All right.
And you have to leave the country.
So basically, keep your I-9 on H1. Enjoy the EAD
choice. Depends on what your situation is.
Yeah,
you can choose to do that if you want to.
All right. So enjoy the benefit of H1B.
The risk you're taking is if for some reason the 485 gets denied, you fall out of status, you have to leave the country, and then most probably come back on a H1, which you can do, provided that there's no fraud or anything involved, and you're not removed from the country for some reason.
Okay, perfect. I mean, that simplifies that keeping both is good. And of course, it doesn't mean that you still have to, be on the stringent role of H1B. This I-140 EAD does gives you one reprieve, for the advanced
In case your H1 gets denied due to some reason, then you can switch to I-140 EAD, 485 EAD.
485 EAD, and travel is easier now.
Is easier basically. Because you don't
till the time the green card comes, it is better to maintain H1B.
Yeah, you don't have to go to the consulate and then get stuck there for some reason.
That's what. Even though you have H1B maintained, you have I-140 EAD, you are easy to travel, come back. That's the biggest comfort for all those people who could not attend their family members who were sick or who were dying, who could not attend the family functions. This is a reprieve for all of them, basically. Thank you. Now, there's a series of questions here. Prashanti, I think we covered major points. I'll go one-on-one. Arvind Vint, he says, I have my I-140 approved, priority date June 2013 EB2 from previous employer, but now with another employer and got I-140 approved. Priority date as November 2018 EB2. Why would he have that priority date? I don't know.
He didn't port the priority date.
He didn't port. Why? I have few questions. Why the priority date in my new I-140 approved changed? Will my
Because you
previously
didn't
approved
port it.
I-140 priority date be counted? How will I know I am still in June 2013 priority? If my previous priority date is still valid, will I be able to downgrade to EB3 and get an EAD?
First, you have to amend your I-140
Wow, yes.
to
What did he do?
make sure that your priority date, maybe not his fault, somebody must have done it and they must not have, maybe he didn't inform that he had a previous, who knows. So you have to first amend your I-140 and port the priority date because it's not yet ported. And then you have to amend it again. So can you do two amendments in one I-140? You're amending to port the priority date and you're amending to change to EB3 as well, because you need to change to EB3 or downgrading. So it's possible, yeah.
Yeah, it's possible double amendments.
It's possible that you ask for both benefits, file an amendment and ask for both things to be done. Yes, you have to try it at this point because that's the only option you have. But it's possible.
All right. Thank you. Another question comes from Shamala. She says, hi, I have an approved I-140 with a priority date of 6th of May 2014. I am currently on H4 EAD, but no job. How can I file I-485?
So she has an approved I-140, but she's not working for that employer, is it?
It's a very incomplete question.
So maybe
you are on H4 EAD, but no job. How can I file I-485? H4 EAD has got nothing to do with the primary is filing, right?
So maybe the primary is not filing. So maybe it's her I-140.
Okay.
And she was on a H1 previously and then moved to a H4.
She was on H4 EAD earlier. Now she wants to file I-485.
Yeah, you can file if you go back to your employer and you ask them. You don't have to be presently working for them, but you have to ask them to fill out that 485J, and it's basically a promise.
But she's on H4. She has to go to
the you can still file.
Spouse's employer. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Even if you're on H4, you can file for adjustment of status to a 485.
Okay. Sure.
What you need to do is approach your employer, whoever your previous employer was, ask them to fill out the 485J, right? And it's a promise of future job. It's a future job offer. So you don't have to be working for them right now. It does not matter, my dear Jyotsna.
No, the H1B employer is H1B, right? The H1B's employer, basically, she has to reach to them, right? Or who would be? Nobody there.
The 485, the person who filed a green card. H1 has nothing to do with it here. She's on H4.
Okay.
So she has someone who filed for her green card. A green card is a future job offer.
Okay.
Right? So it's possible that she's on H4. She doesn't have a job right now. But if the employer is willing to file right now and say that there is a job available once you get your green card, that's what the 485J is about. They have to sign the 485J. If they're willing to do that, you can still file the 485 and then start working for them once you get an EAD. That would be prudent for you to start working for them once. So there's no obligation on the employer's part right now. They don't have to put you on the payroll right now. But it would be prudent for them to put you on the payroll, when you get your EAD, and then even if it's for a short period of time, if they're not able to sustain you for some reason, you can file again a 485J after 6 months and transfer to another employer who's willing to who's willing to put you on the payroll.
Perfect. One parallel question for people who have I-140, like they'll get I-485 filing, they'll get their EADs through that, and they also have H4 EADs. Will they be able to use either of them?
Yeah, it's same as the H1 situation.
Okay.
It's just in this case, it's two EADs instead of a H1 and a EAD.
Because if you speak about renewing 485 EADs every year is the biggest hassle right now. Too much of wait time. In that case, if you get 3 years of H4 EAD is much better than.
Right, then the hassle. But if the H4 goes away completely, then at least you have the backup of the 485. So no matter how you look at it,
understood. Right.
Filing a 485 is extremely important. Making use of this opportunity is extremely important because we
apply for everything together. Yes.
We don't know when it will come again. But then after you apply, you can always decide whether you want to maintain both statuses or what you want to do.
Okay. Another question from Vrinda Ramachandran. My husband is on H1B and have an approved I-140 with a past employer. His priority date is April 2014 on EB3, which I see now has become current. His current employer has not filed MI perm yet. In a situation like this, I wanted to know options so we can benefit from the recent development of EB3 dates for filing of employment-based visa application become 1st January 2015. I mean, he can go to previous employer then and get a...
We already answered that question. He can
Yes,
go to the
that's right.
previous employer and
Yes.
beg them and plead with them. So that's why you have to maintain good relationships with your previous
Always
employers.
maintain good relations with your previous employers. Anyways,
Yes.
you should maintain because they took care of you.
Yes.
They got you to this country, or even if not got you, or they transferred your visa, they saved you in your tough times. Always respect them. That is very true. Okay. We can, when can we expect EB3 date of filing to mid 2016? Possible in next 12 to 18 months? Well, I don't see that anyways.
We don't have a crystal ball. I
Okay.
don't see that. Yes.
Can these dates go back in future? 100%
Yes,
yes.
absolutely. They will go back. Not can,
Okay.
they will.
Will the dates for EB2 and EB3 move faster as predicted?
Yeah, so as I was saying, the visa bulletin does say about rapid forward movement of EB2 and EB3.
For how long?
It doesn't say, but it says rapid forward movement in the next few months.
Very good.
So that's all I have. So I don't know
Okay.
what that means.
No birth certificate. We have affidavit. Will that work if affidavit is 4 to 5 years old? No birth certificate, only affidavit. I think
So you
no.
need, if you're an Indian national, you need a non-availability certificate.
And if it
Because
is not there?
if you're not there, you have to file with what you have or try to get the I would try parallelly to get the non-availability certificate, but I would not hold off filing because I don't have it. You will for sure 100% get an RFE. You want to try avoiding RFEs. That's why you want to file with all the documents. But if you're not able to, file with what you have.
Sure.
And try to get that anyway you need the non-availability certificate, you need to try to get that as soon as possible.
Right. Okay. Mukul Sathe is asking, Mukul is asking if someone has approved EB3 I-140 for PD August 2013 and then promoted to EB2 with same PD, can we use EB3 I-140 for filing EAD, both I-140 with same current employer? So he's already having both the things with him.
So he has EB2 and EB3. Yes, you can use the EB3 and file your 485.
Same
a clever
PD.
person who has done it in advance.
You're a lucky person, Mukul. Congratulations. You fall in both the categories now. So enjoy. It's a day to party for you for sure. Okay. And then it is, I have my I-140 approved, priority date June 2013 EB2 from previous employer, but now with another employer and got I-140 approved, priority date given is 2018. Okay, this is the same question. Sorry,
Same
my
question,
bad.
yeah.
Then we have a question. My husband is in EB3 with priority date 2013 Jan. I am on EB2 with priority date of 2011 December. Not sure which is the best option in the scenario. Wow, they're lucky people.
Yeah.
All right.
So I guess, whatever is current, you have to file that. Or you can file both. I mean, you can file a separate 485 and your spouse can file a separate 485. Nothing's stopping you from doing that.
Yeah, one is 2013 EB3, lucky people. And another one is 2011 of December, EB2. I mean, but 2011 hasn't become current in EB2 for sure.
Right.
They'll have to downgrade as well.
Yeah,
Looks
so
like
file for now, file the one that's available for you. And in the future,
that's EB3 priority date.
Yeah,
Yes.
EB3. You file that one and then you as a dependent can join into that 485, just to keep it simple.
Is birth certificate only for primary or even for dependents?
Everyone.
For everyone.
Every single person has to file a separate 485 application and has to meet the requirements for a 485.
Okay.
Even if you're a child or whoever you are.
Will the dates move backwards or going forward? It'll be only forward. It's a
backwards. Sorry.
Absolutely. Sorry for that. Yeah, it's a very rosy question though. All right. So here's the other question. Shamala Kesaraju is asking, can I apply if I'm on H4 now? I have an approved I-140 from my previous employer when I was on H1B at that time. Okay.
We talked about this. You can file for adjustment as long as your employer is willing to sign that 485J and attest to, the offer of employment.
Very good. Very nice. And suppose current employer not holding the I-140, it's with previous employer. Yeah, you go to previous employer.
Well,
then
go to the previous employer. What choice do you have? And file through them.
Can you clarify if filing is per date of filing or per final action date? Still not clear.
The date of filing as of now.
Absolutely.
unless they change it tomorrow.
Can we apply on filing dates? Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
date of filing.
Can a physician on EB2 downgrade to EB3?
Yes, anybody can. So basically, nothing is changing in the job offer. The labor cert is the same. The job offer is the same. It's up to us when you're filing the I-140 whether we want to put it in. If you qualify for EB2, only you can put it in EB2. But if you qualify for EB2, you obviously qualify for EB3 as well, because you're higher than EB3 as long as you meet the minimum requirement. So in this, we are opting to do EB3 for
Okay.
technical reasons, because
Absolutely. And we can say
there's
that the
other-
dates have become current. That's why we are doing it. There's no
yeah,
other reason. We
there's
are
no
not
reason.
downgrading our skills for sure.
Right, we're not.
We are advanced degree holders.
You're still doing an advanced degree, but you're applying in EB3 because the
Right.
dates are available.
Right. Perfect. What about consular processing for people living outside USA? There's a question by Gayatri Abhishek.
They're out of luck. They have to come into the country as soon as possible and file adjustment of status.
Okay. Then another question is Mahendra Sagnani is asking, how about medical? What is that? Okay.
So the medicals,
Good question.
there's a 1-800 number that you can call, and all the doctors are available at that number. So it'll be county wise, so you can see whoever is closest to you. You go there, tell them you need an immigration medical done, and they will know what to do. So they will do all the infectious diseases, TB, etc., etc.
There are some private doctors doing it. Immigration doctors.
It has to be certified by immigration, so it'll be in that list. So if you contact that 1-800 number, it has to be, they have to be in that list. Only then.
What is that 1-800 number? I didn't get it.
The 1-800 number, if you call the number, then the list of medical doctors available in your area who are certified by immigration is available via that list.
So that's the USCIS 1-800 number will tell us.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, Dhananjay Kulkarni is asking, hi Jyotsna and Prashanti, what are the chances of people with priority date in 2019 in EB3 to become current? Guy, you just
not going to happen now, but this is also a miracle. Who knows? You know, there was a lot of bad that because of bad, good happened. At least something good happened, but a lot of bad had to happen before that. So yeah, unlikely.
Is a long fight. Yes, we are doing advocacy for the right things for our Indian brothers and sisters. That's where I'm vocal there. You know me pretty well. We have answers there for that.
Let's hope that we are able to get something done.
Absolutely. Oh my God, my questions went away. 1 second. So, I mean, there are so many questions. I lost track of my questions now. Is it necessary to go back to previous employer if he agrees for file 485J? Yes, please.
Yes, you have to.
Do you foresee the date move faster for EB2 and EB3 as most of the world is current?
I mean, again, we answered that. There'll be some forward movement in the next few months as per what they have said, but we can't hope for too much. This is a lot already. What we got is a lot. Okay. So
Divya,
to hope for more. Yeah.
Right. Divya Khanna Arora is asking, does previous employer have to pay anything if they sign the Form J?
No, they don't have to.
Okay, saves money. You better take some sweets for them though.
Yeah, keep them happy.
All right. Is it necessary to, okay, so my wife has EB2 with 2014 priority date. Her ex-employer is a consultancy firm which has revoked her I-140. She's now with one of the FANG who is willing to file PERM. I don't know what does it mean. Can they do EB3 downgrade and PERM together?
No, unfortunately, you have to go back to your old employer. And I understand that they have revoked it, but it's possible that the labor cert is still valid. So they could still refile the I-140 based on that labor cert, even though they have revoked it. They can refile it and file for I-140 and adjustment of status concurrently, if they are willing to.
So Naveen Gupta has a question which again will be reiterated, but it will be compiled together. Says, for approved I-140 from previous employer, if the previous employer doesn't fill out 485J, is there any other way to apply 485 independently? Is the previous employer legally obligated to honor the job offer?
No, that's up to them. Whether they're offering you a job or not, you can't force them to offer you a job. So
Ankush is asking, Ankush Mangla says, basic question, what is the difference between final action date and date of filing? How does it help me staying in US?
Yeah, so you have to look at the dates which are closer to you, and that is going to help you. So
the final action dates will give you the green card immediately.
Yes.
The date of filing will give you
allow you to only file the 485 and remain in the country on a 485, which is not such a bad thing compared to a H1.
Okay, if dependent is turning 21 in 1 year, will dependent be able to capture the date even if GC is allotted after 2 years?
Yeah, so this is very important actually, very important question. It's about aging
That is
out
from Harsh
question.
Mahajan.
Aging out question. So as long as at the time of filing the 485, the dependent was under 21, then they're eligible to get their green card even if it comes 5 years later, because they have filed at the time. So at the duration that the 485 takes, that time is frozen, that age is frozen. So you have to make sure that they file before the age of 21.
Perfect. Okay. Another important question, the birth certificate has to be in English or any other language would work?
Any other language is good, whatever language it comes in, right? And then you have to submit a translation.
All right, perfect. What is the process for downgrade to EB2, EB3 and risk in doing that? I mean, it's been already answered, so we'll skip that question.
Yeah.
In the current situation when attorneys will be having so many applications to file, would you
Yes.
also recommend if attorney is going to take more time, file on your own, or you'd advise going through attorney? No, man, you have to make.
Yeah, so this
They're-
is it's very hard. I wish you could just do it on your own, because I understand that attorneys are extremely busy at this time. But unfortunately, fortunately, there are a lot of attorneys available. So you should be able to find someone who will file. We will file for you. So if I promise to file, we will file on time. We will not take your money and
Very
not
good,
file.
very good.
But filing on your own is risky because the forms are extremely complicated, even for us, especially the 944 form. Is very confusing. So I would really suggest that you find an attorney, and a competent attorney, and file through them.
So some companies have their own attorneys. Some companies hire attorneys.
So the thing
Some
is,
people can.
at a 485 stage, it's no longer anything to do with the company's attorney. It's just a matter of convenience. The company no longer has any say really in.
It's basically
filing
the J
485.
form. The company has to
Just
sign.
the J form they have to sign, and then
And
they're
then,
done.
and then
So-
Prashanti, you can take care of our application then.
Yeah, absolutely. So it doesn't have to. It's not in any way
Absolutely.
attached to the employer
Wonderful.
anymore. You're free to a certain extent. Yeah. To choose
All
your
right,
own attorney.
Prashanti, I'm talking to you. You're answering so many questions. Please share your contact info one more time.
So my email is prashanti@reddyesq.com. Website is www.reddyesq.com. My phone number is 212-354-1010. So that's my information. We can also put it in the chat.
Yes, in fact, I will put it in the chat. I'll put it in the chat later on as well. But yes, PRASHANTHI
@reddy, REDDY, esq.com. Or you can just go to my website and find my information, www.reddy.esq.com.
Okay, yeah, they see your name here, Prashanti, so spelling would be correct at least.
Yes,
So,
Prashanti Reddy. If
of
you
course-
Google my name and just say Prashanti Reddy attorney or Prashanti Reddy ESQ, my website will come out as well.
Okay, now it's very interesting question coming in right now. It says Natarajan Rama Subramanian is saying, is certified police record required for filing 485? Man, what did you
Not if you're in the country, only if you're outside the country.
do? Okay, outside the country.
So
Okay.
485 you can't file anyway if you're outside the country. So
Right.
no. Answer is no. That is, I know where he's getting that from. That is when you're filing an immigrant visa.
Okay.
When you're outside the country, they ask for the police clearance.
Oh, okay. So Karishma Minocha Gulati is asking, dates will not backward as it happened earlier. No, it can always move backward.
It will most probably. So you have to file
Be fast.
See,
Be quick.
the good thing is by October 15th, we might get some relief because we will know what's happening with the November bulletin. So, so we'll be able to take it into November, the filings that we have. But yeah, so we have to wait for October 15th though, for that to know whether it's moving forward to November.
Okay. Thank you. Another question, Divya Khanna Arora is asking, can my husband proceed with I-485 and the dependent, that's me, stays on H-1B and eventually move under his 485 at a later point of time?
No, you should file now for a 485 and we discuss this. You can still maintain your H1 status.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about that. There's no reason why you shouldn't file the 485 now. You cannot file later because you have to again wait for your dates to become current, even for a dependent. So no, you should file now.
Is there a link for requirement documents for adjustment of status?
If you send me an email, I can send you the link.
Perfect. Please send an email to Prashanti, Prashanti@reddyesq.com.
.com.
Simple as that. And the telephone number is?
212-354-1010.
1 second, I'm going to write it there. Contact Prashanti at 212
354
354
1010.
1010. Okay, perfect. And I missed a lot of other questions, but Prashanti, it looks like, we have covered a lot of things. A lot of people
I
are,
think
of
we
course,
have.
watching
I think
us
there were
right
a lot
now.
of useful questions there. So because of that, very interesting questions we were
Yeah,
able to
I mean,
cover.
the morning I was talking to my friend, of course, she had her date, for 2012 in EB2. And of course, with the Lost Hopes, they said, yeah, congratulations to people who got 2011 up till 2011, but we did not
Yeah.
make it. And I said, no, you can always downgrade it to EB3 and go. They're saying, no, the employer would not do.
That's the employer's preference. Unfortunately, yeah, you're tied to the employer. But again, you have to convince them, as I said, the benefits of being on a EAD as opposed to being on a H1 for them, the benefit for them.
What about if, considering, taking a chance in life, person transfers their job to another company, and of course the perm and all itself is going to take a whole big time.
Yeah, so that won't work.
That's not work.
Unfortunately,
It's less
no.
time. So they have to convince them only, looks like.
Yeah, to downgrade it.
All right. So now documentation, the form that's we want to recap everything. We are
So
filling a
basically,
form 485,
right.
getting a J form signed by the employer or the previous employer, getting medical records from an immigration doctor, which USCIS 1-800 number can tell you which all doctors are there in your vicinity. And do the doctors charge the same fees or they charge separate fees? I mean, all doctors can charge different fees or they charge the same
That's
fees?
up to them. Yeah, the doctors.
Oh, that's
might
up to
charge.
them?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But usually it's standardized.
So what is the basic nature of test in this medical?
They do, all the mainly it's the TB, the tuberculosis for Indian nationals, because that comes out positive for most of us, because maybe we got it at some point in our childhood, and it's still in there, though it's inactive. So they will sometimes even take an X-ray, but they will tell you what needs to be done. You don't have to tell them anything. They know what needs to be done.
About 485 filing, any other records are seen? People have driving tickets,
Oh, so no,
to...
no, that's not a criminal. That's actually a very important topic that we didn't even cover, and I'm glad you did that, because having even a petty offense, there are people who will not realize the problem with doing so, and they will petty theft. They will shoplift. There are a lot of women who will just pick up something from the store and walk out. It's not necessarily that they're thieves or they're criminals by profession, but it's a habit from back home or whatever.
Kleptomaniacs, you call them.
And also some are, can't help themselves. Right. So in this situation, it becomes then a criminal offense, and then there is a bunch of questions in your 485 where you have to answer: have you ever been arrested? Etc., etc. And drinking and driving is another nuisance.
DUI.
DUI.
Okay.
Driving under the influence, which is also DUI. This is another important thing. I mean, a lot of things that can happen. This can happen to any one of us, right? You have maybe 2 drinks instead of 1 drink, and you get pulled over by the cop, and then he will give you a ticket for DUI. So if it's just a ticket, then you're fine. But if it depends on the police officer, they can do anything, that with the police.
Right.
So, but if they decide to arrest you and take you in and charge you formally, then it becomes an arrest, right? And so then you have to decide, you have to mark that as yes, and you have to explain it. And if there is a petty offense exception, so for that shoplifter, if they shoplifted and the money was below a certain amount, then it's not a felony, it's a misdemeanor. Okay. And if it's a misdemeanor and if you've not committed any other offenses, or if it's this one drinking while driving offense that you've had and you don't have any other offenses, you can still be excused, but you have to mention it in your 485. You can't hide it.
So about traffic tickets, that's not a problem though.
So no, traffic violation is not a criminal offense. That doesn't even count. So we're only talking about these common things that I sometimes see happen with Indian nationals, because usually we are not
There's one
criminally
more
inclined. They're
pertinent
not
question,
criminally inclined, but
Right.
sometimes these things
One
happen.
more to Indian nationals specifically about
And the
domestic abuse.
other thing that happens, Jyocha, is assault. Sometimes you might get into
Domestic
a fight
abuse
with
I'm speaking
someone.
about. Yes, that's what I was
You
coming
might
to.
get into a fight with someone at a bar or on a
Assault.
street.
Yes,
Someone comes
yes,
and
yes.
attacks you, you're trying to defend yourself,
All right.
right? But both of you get arrested because the officers don't know who did what
Right.
first, right?
Right.
Somebody spits on you and you spit on them back. That's happened with COVID in New York, especially. There's some
Oh my God.
instances
Okay.
people have spit on other people, and then
So
other
that's
people went
counted
and
as
hit them.
what?
So that's assault.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
All right.
You just
I
have to
get
walk away from anything that happens to you. But sometimes you have to protect yourself.
And
So
about
so again, so you have to go to court and you have to fight it out.
okay.
And you can't accept it that yes, I did it, and then then
Absolutely.
you'll be charged with a felony even if you don't have to go to jail. But then your immigration will be affected.
Oh my God.
Sometimes attorneys will say, okay, let's just accept this because anyway there's no jail time. No, there's immigration consequences. So let's not take it to trial. Let's just
Wow.
accept.
Okay.
This is a deal that's been given to us by by the DA. So let's just accept it. But you can't.
All
You
right.
have to look at the immigration consequences.
And
So,
other than that, the domestic abuse issue, sometimes the
Yes,
police may have
domestic
been called
abuse.
in. There are a lot of H4s who got abused,
Yes,
women
absolutely.
specifically.
Yes.
And I'm in touch with so many women organizations, we get to hear how
Yes, me too.
women have
Yeah.
suffered.
Right.
Now, in this time, of course, they're sticking with their husbands or whatever to come to a status and be FR, of course. What happens if an incident has been reported to the police, but no charge has been pressed?
So then there's a question of, have you ever been arrested but not charged?
All right.
There is that question also. There, like, I don't know, 50, 60 questions in the 485. You have to read each one of them correctly. Answer it truthfully because you can always overcome it. There are ways of overcoming it. But if you lie and they find out and it's just fraud, then you won't get a green card for your entire life after that. So
all right.
Don't lie on your application. Again, this is important why you should use an attorney because they'll advise you.
Right, absolutely.
How to do it.
Very nice. So people can choose their own attorneys other than their own company attorneys only if they get the permission to sign, they sign their J form, the employers.
Yeah, and I don't see why the employer will have a problem with why they'll insist on using their own attorney.
What is the usual fees, Prashanti, for 485 filing by attorneys? I mean, how much do they charge? Any range? I'm generally asking. I'm not asking your particular range, but
right. It could range anywhere from $1,000 for each 485 is a separate application.
Right.
From 1,000 to 2,000, 3,000 every attorney. Some attorneys charge 5,000 also.
Wow.
So it's a huge range.
Right. Okay. And what is the fees for 485 filing otherwise?
So I don't have the exact fees with me right now. I don't remember.
Because they're revising it?
But yeah, they're revising it and it's going to go up by 1,000. It's 12 something right now, 1,200 something. But the advantage of the fee now is you don't have to pay separately for the 765 and the
765 is around $410.
Yes, and the I-131 is another $400 something. So effectively your fee is going to increase by $800 to $900 because of these two things. Because if you file these two things, then if you don't file them, then of course the fee has actually gone down by a few dollars. The 485 fee.
Perfect. Sorry, joined late. How long will it take to downgrade from EB3 to EB2?
Well, it doesn't matter how long it takes because you have to file both together, 485 and the I-140. So you can't first think of downgrading, getting the approval, and then moving to a 485 because by then the dates will retrogress.
And in the meantime, you have to maintain your H1B.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah.
You cannot go anywhere. Tricky question for people who are applying for their H4 EADs now, and the dates have become current. Should they apply H4 EAD or just simply apply for?
No. Apply H4 EAD and file your 485 as well. Do everything.
And then use whatever suits you best.
Whatever suits you best.
If you get H4 EAD for 3 years, it's much better than thing. So this basically we get only every year extension on 485, I-140.
Yes,
EAD?
usually the EADs are extended. Advance parole and EADs you have to file every year.
Every year. It's a big mess again because the system is too slow right now.
Yeah, so you just have to keep filing 6 months in advance. Put in an application every 6 months.
And keep paying the fees, huh?
Yeah, that's another.
I mean, anyways, the business would be usual.
Yeah. So another thing that I was just thinking about is if they are, even when you're on a H1, the question of out of status. If you're on a 485, and if you want to file a 485, most important thing is that you have to be in status, and you should have never violated your status in the past as well, because those things can come back to haunt you, right? So that's another important thing that we should touch upon. Everybody on a H1 has at some point for a few days has violated their status. A lot of them, you'd be surprised. 60,
Really?
70%, because they can't help it. It's not that they want to violate their status. They filed an amendment, it got denied, they were working, they couldn't stop working immediately, or they just went out of status and they didn't leave immediately because they couldn't leave. So whatever, there are situations that come up so often where the person, somehow or the other goes out of status. Even if it's for a day or two. Sometimes they file an extension, gets denied, then they file another H1, but then there's an out of status period. So it's important to note that there are exceptions to this. Even if you're out of status, you can still file. There's something called 245K. So if you're out of status for less than 6 months, then that is an exception. So even if they find out that you're out of status, you can still file the 485 and get the green card, though you were out of status for a certain period of time. The other thing is they will look at the date of your last arrival. So they're not going to look at 10 years ago if you have traveled in between. So from the date of your last arrival to now, they want to make sure that you have maintained status. They're not going to look at it from previous dates. So that's another thing to keep in mind.
Okay. So there are a lot of questions that are coming in. People have joined late. Of course, to sum up, of course, we have said everything, we will do a little summary before closing, Prashanti, because I don't want you to repeat answers again and again. People are joining, asking again, same thing, porting from EB3 to EB2 to EB3. And then, of course, how much, the concurrent filing, of course, we can talk about, because you don't have to wait for getting EB3 first. You file it concurrently with 485 and go for it. How about September 29th credit date? Is okay. That is again, credit score would matter to file 485. Okay. About credit score, yes, we can have this topic.
So
very good question by Ankit Sangnani.
Yes, yeah, good question, because that's part of the application now, and I forgot to mention it with the 944 form. They also require your credit report, so you have to get a credit score. But of course, if you have a bad credit score, then they will look at the totality of the circumstances. They'll look at everything else, not just your credit score. That's one document. So you should be able to overcome that if you have other documents which are good.
Right. How much time does the processing takes place? The time for processing of this 485 application till the time we get it.
Now the processing time is not important because the visa number is not available. But if the visa numbers continue to be available for an extended period of time, the 485 usually takes 12 to 18 months to process.
What are we speaking about here in the time frame? We are filing 485.
Yeah, so the processing time for the 485 is what
it's 12 to 18 months?
Yeah.
So you maintain your H1 for another 1 year, get it stamped, and wait for it.
No.
Then?
The 485, you have a 485, you don't need to maintain your H1. You can choose to be on 485, right?
The 485 processing time, you're saying it's 12 to 18 months?
Yeah.
Then?
That's not that bad.
What the heck?
That's pretty good.
No, I mean to say, my question is,
yeah,
you're speaking about waiting for 12 to 18 months, another 12 to 18 months to get your EADs.
No.
Are you saying that?
You asked me a question about 485. You didn't say EAD. You asked me 485 processing time. You didn't say EAD processing time.
What is EAD
processing time? Is 1 to 3 months.
But to come on the status of 485,
as long as you file it.
Okay, my bad.
Okay,
I'm wrong there. I get it. 485 is for the green card. We're filing it, but you eventually have a parallel, EAD. This thing, I-140 EAD will come though in 3 months time, right?
Correct.
You're saying that.
Yeah.
Okay, but availing the advance parole, do you not need to have the approved I-485?
No, you get advance parole while the 485 is pending.
Okay, sorry, my bad. Absolutely blank there. Looks like it was a long day for me.
It's long day for both of us.
And yes, because I was happy the moment I woke up, saw the visa bulletin, and then I became sad.
I think yours is the first call that I got today morning.
Yes, I called you early morning at 7 o'clock, and to my viewers as well. And of course, I shared the news with everyone. And then, of course, I circled back USCIS's statement there in the visa bulletin. And the visa bulletin had that thing, the date of final action would be considered. And of course, it was like, why are we happy? They're showing us the carrot, but it's not coming to us. So
Yeah,
that
there's a lot
was
of
there,
anxiety as to what exactly they meant by that. Yeah.
Yeah, how much average fee needs to be paid for 485 filing is you have already told. So they're going to increase it to some $2,000 looks like, huh?
Increasing by $1,000 for
So
each
1,200 it
application.
was to 2,200 basically.
Yeah.
EB2
Correct.
with priority date 2016 from my previous employer. New employer about to start perm. Can I go to EB2 or EB3? You do one thing, you go back to your previous employer.
Yeah, that's the
They
only
can't.
thing you can do at this point.
And yes, there. Sorry, joined late. How long will it take to downgrade from EB3 to EB2? So you have already answered back that thing. Too many people, many thousands of people are watching right now. I will file 485 under EB2, which is current. Later, if EB3 GC dates become current, then can we downgrade to EB3? Yes.
Yes,
Can.
we discussed that as well.
Sure, perfect. I mean, a lot of questions are coming in still. Hi, Jyotsna, can you provide the link? Of course, they were watching the four folks. If anyone is downgrading from EB2 to EB3 during downgrading process time, if bulletin retrogress EB3 on the priority date, will the EAD be through as it's concurrently filed or wait until the priority date is back or current?
No, EAD will be processed whether it's current or not. As soon as you file the 485, the EAD will be processed. Now that whether the priority date is current or not, it doesn't affect your EAD application or your advanced parole application.
Another question for EAD. Are biometrics happening for this EAD? I will go to EAD.
They will happen.
Or therefore only H4 EAD?
No. For everybody, biometrics are an issue because the application support centers are partially open. I shouldn't say completely closed.
No, my question is, for this category EADs, I-140
yes, you need biometrics. There's no doubt. Without, you can't get a green card.
Okay.
It's for green card.
Now somebody who has given biometrics for H4 EAD, can they be considered?
I don't know whether they will consider. Right now, they're not considering. They're only considering H4 extension. If you're previously on H4, filing extension, gave EAD. They gave that benefit, but they have not given benefit.
Okay, so if you were filing for H4 extension, H4 EAD basically, an extension, if you gave your fingerprints earlier, biometrics earlier in this year or previously whenever it was, they'll still consider and they'll not send you for biometrics.
Yes.
You're saying that?
Yes.
Okay, what is the other question? Too many platforms I'm getting questions from. Do we need medicals before or after RFE? What the heck? Sorry, I'm sorry. So do we need medicals before or after RFE?
It's makes more sense to submit it before, but some people prefer
when is the medical exactly required? Okay, that's a very good question.
At the time of filing, you have to submit medicals, but that doesn't mean that your case will get denied if you don't submit medicals. They will send you an RFE asking for medicals. At that time also, you can submit it.
So you can submit it both times?
Yes, but it's prudent to submit it at the time of filing. That's what we always do. But if you're not able to get it due to time constraint, then you do it later.
All right. And I mean, we have various platforms where people are watching you right now, Prashanti. It so happens thousands of people are watching us.
That's good. So a lot of people are getting the information.
And when I'll go to TV Asia, of course, the number is going to increase there. For all my audience, I have not stopped in my work for my community, for my green card backlog community. Very vocal. And I'm getting more strengthened joining a platform which is national level platform, that is TV Asia. I'll be premiering with my shows from October 6th there. And immigration is a hardcore subject where I'll be taking it up and hosting shows on TV Asia for that. For all of you to be informed, that's what I'm telling you. Of course, you've seen me on Mana TV earlier. So my work is on. Secondly, our advocacy for the green card backlog is on. I have been in touch with Mr. Shalabh Kumar. As you understand that I interviewed him for almost 2.5 hours last time, that last show that I did with Mana TV. And he had promised that he will be pushing for EO. So for all those people who are not here today in the current date of filing or whatever dates are falling in 2015, they are fallen until, because for all of you, the work is still on. The call for executive action to give EADs, permanent EADs rather, the proposal is as is still on. Because we understand that Indian immigrants, high skill immigrants are here. They have to wait for, many years. We have to make the process easy for them, for their existence. Not just that, it will be easy and good for the employers as well. As we see, the stringency on H1B is coming in. Proposal to remove level 1, level 2 wages, starting it from level 3, level 4 itself is tough. So I believe a lot of good things will happen. So Mr. Shalabh Kumar updated me today also. He was meeting Jared Kushner today. He met Rand Paul early in the morning and he's pushing. I don't sell anybody's profile. I don't promote Mr. Shalabh Kumar, but he promised me on screen, he's sticking to it. Previously, the equations were different. This time, the equation is different. I am behind him. I'm behind many other people. We are behind other people to get our work done. One, for Bill S-386, we support that, but unfortunately, things are not going in the right direction considering the situation, the election time it is. So, hang in there. If things don't work out in this session, for next session, a new legislation, new bill will be more, efficient, and we will work towards it. Our organization's name is High Skilled Immigrants for America. We had to, create this organization just to do advocacy. You have seen me into different forms, different groups. Sorry, Prashanti, I'm taking a little time in saying
please,
this message.
it's important.
Many other groups, have seen, we started off with the Republican Hindu Coalition coming to picture, supporting us. We backed off, of course, they backed off as well. We had a little strife. And of course, Mr. Shalabh Kumar again jumped in. So I have taken a lot of backlash from your people about is Jyotsna favoring RSC or Shalabh Kumar or somebody else? And is Jyotsna on a green card or citizen? No, I'm not. I'm as good as you. Today is a happy day for me, a little bit. Maybe I'll also get an EAD now, but that doesn't solve my purpose, neither yours. Our fight is different. A fight of ideologies has to be won. We have been projected very wrongly. I have been talking to US tech workers as well. As I told you, we had a Zoom meeting with Kevin Lin, and they had 10-point agenda. They said we support EADs. They also support, Prashanti, they also said we support I-140 EADs. But then they put a condition saying we will only support once legislative reform happens to H-1B visas, non-immigrant visas. Their terms and conditions are really fierce. One of them is, for an example, is removing the dual intent of H-1B visa, and many other things. I believe in understanding and point of view from different parties and people who are opposing. They also have certain things where we would agree also, because somewhere the misuse of H-1Bs has happened. Employers have misused it. Lower wages have been paid. Some genuine people have been replaced from their jobs who are American citizens. We cannot go in isolation, or we cannot go in extremes. We have to understand both points and come to a conclusion. That's what my effort is. If you have known me for these years, I try to balance it out, understand everybody's perspective. And please, we are here in this country, making this country strong, but at the same time, we don't have any intent to remove any American citizen from their job. I hope that makes it better understanding for all of you what we're doing. But yes, the work is still on. I will disclose one other step that we'll be taking very soon for the green card backlogged community. We'll be announcing it soon. It'll be a major, announcement where we all will collectively participate to, speak for our concerns and raise our voice together. Today happens to be a special day. Prashanti has given us great insight. A person who I can bank on. I don't monetize this relationship with her, neither does she with me. Whenever I call her, she comes to help us out and guide us through. And I'm very sure you would have benefited from this session today. Prashanti, I'm very, very thankful to you. And I have spoken to you about the agony of everything that has happened in the life, with me also speaking about, many times I've said about the same thing, EADs and all, right? So yes, we are at a place where rapid movement has helped us through. That's a great thing. And I'm very thankful to you for, guiding us through, giving all smallest possible, information that will count to the success of our petitions. And I'm very sure there might be many people interested to reach out to you. And it becomes my responsibility again to please share your contact information, your available times. And if we are speaking about processing, filling in of these applications and all, what is the estimated time with you, if you were to file in the application, how would you take up these applications? How many days will you take to file an individual case or something?
So basically,
just want to have an idea.
Right. Most of it, luckily, we are very automated. We we have a system in place because we're used to doing this and we're used to deadlines. We were there during the 2007 deadline, and each time, during the H1s also, we have deadlines every year, and we know exactly what it means. And we have never promised anything and not delivered, ever. So there's never been an instance where I have taken the fee from someone and I'm not filed on time. No matter what, we work 24 hours a day if needed. If I take up something, then it's a promise that it will be filed on time. With reference to how much time it will take, I don't want to make false promises and say 1 day, 2 days. It really depends on how good you are with the documents that you're giving me and how proactive you are with submitting everything. So once the case is given to me, it shouldn't take more than maybe a couple of days to process it on our end. Of course, it is a first come, first serve. But as I said, once you give me the case, you do not need to be anxious about it. It will be filed on time. Otherwise, I will not take it. I will say, look, I don't have the time to do it. I'm not doing it. So, that is a promise I make to you. But other than that, Jyotsna, also what you said about, I also am an immigrant, so I understand the pain that you're going through. I was just lucky enough to come in and do everything before this whole mess started. But, I went through the same process of the labor cert, the 140, the 485, and citizenship and the whole thing, the whole 9 yards. So I know what the system is, firsthand. It's not just knowing it as an attorney, but living through it as well. And I see the pain as an attorney. I see the pain that people on a H1B go through, the uncertainty that they have in their lives, the anxiety that they have in their lives, the fact that they can't, effectively provide for their families. They can't make permanent decisions. They can't buy houses and cars and things that everybody expects, every successful person or even, person who is doing even an average, averagely well expects to have, like a car and a house and,
Right.
Things for their family, plan for the future. How can you plan for your future if you're on a H1? So just the anxiety of being on a H1 is enough to drive a person crazy. So I understand that because all these stories that I hear firsthand. So I'm hoping that something will happen, whether it be the present administration or a new administration, that people wake up and see it's almost like bonded labor.
Absolutely. Very true.
You are forced to stay with the particular employer, forced to follow their terms and conditions, no matter how unreasonable they are, because you're worried about your status. That shouldn't be the case.
True.
An employer should not have sway on your status or should not have control over your status. That should be something that you control. So that's why, I think Canadian immigration and the other systems of immigration are much
They're
fairer,
better. True.
where you control your immigration and you just have points where if you have a job, you have this many points, you have this much income, you have this many points. So, that's how it should be, not allowing employers to completely control your lives and your status. So I'm hoping that something new will come up with its comprehensive immigration reform, where they go to a point-wise system and these numbers and quotas don't mean anything anymore, or
Right.
they move and add more visa numbers. However it plays through, something has to happen and happen soon.
Thank you so much. In fact, people are not letting you go. Prashanti, one more question came from a friend. Name is Sunil, and he's asking, what if my employer asks me to file change of location? Will it impact my I-485 and EAD process? I mean, I could not understand that question.
No, the change of location is something to do with the H1. You have to file an amendment, but the green card is usually done if you are a consultant and you keep moving. The green card is done from the principal place where your employer is located, not where your work site is.
Okay.
So it really doesn't matter. So you have to look into it and see what is the work site given in your labor cert. And if it is your employer's address, then you don't have to worry, because they expect, the process expects that you will keep changing, and it's done for that. So employer address is fine. So you don't have to worry about change in location.
Okay, so the primary office, that the place, the employer's office has
So
to be
if
there.
the regulations say that if you are a roving employee, or if you're an employee who keeps moving from one client to another, like in a consultancy position, the address, work location that should be given is your employer's work location. That should be given as the primary work location. So that's there in the memo itself. They've given that benefit for roving employees. So it really doesn't matter where you're moving.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Prashanti. Looks like we have covered almost all the questions. A lot of people were watching us. They are still watching us, in fact. And regarding the documentation, it is concerned. I mean, are we submitting the employment experience certificates during this time, 485 filing? When do,
No. You don't have to submit I-140 documents.
No. 485 filing. Do we need experience letters?
No, you don't. No, I-140 document for experience letters are I-140 documents. You don't need to submit the experience letters at the 485 stage.
All right. Okay. We don't have to submit anything. We are just submitting the form 485.
The forms, your status proof, your passport, your medicals, your birth certificate. These are the basic documents that you're submitting, and then of course your public charge documents.
Public charge, I mean, of course, the separate form, not the document, but the form.
And the tax returns that go with it.
Tax returns for how many years?
The last 3 years should be good.
All right. And pay stubs? No.
Your pay stubs to show proof of status, yes.
All right.
That shows if you're on a H1, your status is really shown by your pay stubs.
Perfect. Looks like it's been almost, what, 1.5 hours. We covered pretty nice things. Thank you, Prashanti. And very soon, I'll host you on TV Asia as well.
Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All my friends who are watching. Congratulations to all who could make it to date of filing or final action dates. A day to celebrate, some respite, but not for everyone. And we'll work towards that cause that covers every one of you who are in the backlog. Appreciate your time, Prashanti. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for watching us today.
Take care. Thank you. Good luck to everyone.
Thank you. Live stream is off. Oh my God. A lot of people were watching.
Yeah.
Without television platform. So there was 7.8K views.
Wow.
That's my platform. Okay. That's Jyotsna Sharma without television.
7.8. This is the second show. Wasn't there another show that we did that had a lot of?
Of course. That had 13,000, 19. It went on to 16,000.
Yeah.
The ban, travel ban.
Right.
But this is without a television platform.
Wasn't that also on your Facebook? Was that on?
It was on Mana TV's Facebook.
Oh, it was Mana TV's Facebook.
But I promoted it.
Right, of course.
I promoted it from that platform.
Yeah, right.
But this is 7.8K is, it's going to grow in next 3 hours.
Right.
It's going to grow in next 3 hours because in PST, people are still working.
Yeah.
They're going to watch it.
So how do they, they just click on the link and then it comes
It's a watch party. I hosted.
Right.
So anybody can click and watch. In fact, why could I not tag you today?
What, you didn't on Facebook?
Prashanti Reddy, you are my friend on Facebook, right? Or
yeah,
not?
so why didn't you tag me?
I couldn't tag you.
Oh, wonder why.
Maybe you have removed that security settings or something.
No, I didn't change anything.
Anyways, anyway is good. I publicized, I spoke, I genuinely, ask you to share your contact info because yes, people will look up to you.
That's great actually, yeah. But I'm glad that the content was so rich actually. The content was really good for this show.
Right. And by the way, the show is recorded.
Yeah.
Let me stop the recording 1 second because my bad.